What do you do if you have Cowboys assets on your fantasy team? That and more. It's the Week 2 Waiver Wire show here on the Audible. Cecil, Lammey, Sigmund, Bloom. And before we get into the waiver wire quarterbacks to add, Sigmund, I'm going to be playing the role of Dr. Gene. Now, you'll be looking at this, and I'll be talking about the Monday injury rounds from Dr. Gene Bramwell. The full report's available at footballguys.com. But we got to talk about Dak Prescott. Right thumb fractured, not going on injured reserve. That's the latest we have there. Bloom, update if you have something else there. But on Monday, Mike McCarthy confirmed Prescott will have surgery Monday afternoon and told reporters recovery timetable would be better understood after the procedure. Well, here we are, Tuesday morning, and they're not going to put him on IR. So there you go. But you've got Cowboys assets on your fantasy team, and you are thinking, what? And if you have Dak Prescott, well, I hope you had some backup plans. But let's get to those quarterbacks. And the quarterback at the top, Justin Fields, Carson Wentz. Two of them, Bloom. Let's go.
Yeah. And first, I want to say this. Okay, a couple of things as we begin our waiver wire journey through the season. First of all, remember this. They're usually 2, 3, maybe impactful players, truly impactful players that come through on the waiver wire for us. Okay, last year, like Elijah Mitchell, Cordero Patterson, there aren't many. And most years, there aren't many. So when you're spending your waiver wire money, you need to remember that you are thinking best case scenarios, just like when you're drafting for upside. You're looking for upside. You're looking for potential season changers. There aren't many of them. And again, the earlier you pick someone up in the season, the more impact they have because you have them for longer. So while having the hammer at the end when everyone starts to wear down and you can pick up whoever you want is great, especially because you're closer to the playoffs and you can use those players in the playoffs. At the same time, I think we can look back and say, folks who spent 85% of their fab bucks on Elijah Mitchell, they were right last year. That was the right move. You got a lot more out of that than most people got out of their fab bucks. Now, that being said, not a great week on the waiver wire. Not a lot of excitement. It's a good week to kind of keep your powder dry, I think. But if you lost Dak Prescott, you don't have that luxury. The good news is in one quarterback leagues, there should be some help on the wire because actually there were a lot of good performances from quarterbacks that either were drafted late or undrafted in a lot of leagues. And we start out with Carson Wentz. And see, just when you think you know, Carson Wentz says, aha, no, now I have another chapter. And Carson Wentz with his new receivers, his new team, actually was a hero in this game. So you have Detroit coming up this week. That's a tremendous matchup. Every time I see Washington, Detroit, I feel for Lions fans. Last time the Lions were that close, right? Barry Sanders. It's been a while. So obviously Wentz with momentum, you like this. And then Fields, what you saw from Fields, career high in rush attempts, made a few passes downfield in terrible conditions. Some hope here for Fields and going up this week against Green Bay, maybe not an ideal matchup, but I think Fields, because of the conditions, is a good buy low in general. And if he wasn't drafted, and again, wide netting it, generally I look at the Yahoo availability, and if the player is available in 60% or less, I'll put them in the waiver wire column. So for those of you, maybe, I don't want to waste your time, but this drives our app, our waiver wire recommendations. So if Justin Fields is out there, or maybe even again as a buy low, if you're trying to trade for someone to replace Dak, he's a top choice.
And top choice behind him. Where's Geno Smith, by the way? Because you have Marcus Mariota here at 7 to 15%.
Yeah, and I think the next tier is Mariota and Winston, who came into the league together and are always tied together. I have Mariota at 7 to 15%. Winston at 5 to 10%. And by the way, for those of you new to this whole process, the percentages that I prescribe are really mainly to rank players within position and to give you equivalencies or to break ties across positions. You know better than I do how people bid in your league, how aggressive they are, or maybe how conservative they are. So that being said, with Mariota, you saw him run. You saw him really do everything he needed to for them to win this game. The loss was not on Mariota. He is definitely playing like we saw in that one game with the Raiders where there's urgency of saving your career. And I don't think, unlike, say, we'll talk about Kenny Pickett in a little bit, unlike Mitchell Trubisky, I think Mariota did a lot to show, hey, maybe Desmond Ritter's going to have to wait a year before he starts, at least if we're basing it on week 1 against a very tough New Orleans defense. They do get a tough Rams defense this week. Well, tough at least in forcing takeaways, although Josh Allen put on a show. And then you have Winston and Cecil. It felt like Winston, just the whole team, they had to hit the snooze button and then woke up in the second half. But you saw once Winston was able to play Jameis Winston ball, throwing it downfield to Jarvis Landry, throwing it downfield, making plays with Michael Thomas, this was fun. So Jameis Winston this week against Tampa, again, it's a tough matchup, but lots of great narratives there, right? But I think we can see that Winston, I might cease. Even if Dak Prescott had stayed healthy, I might prefer Winston to Prescott going forward. I might prefer Mariota to Prescott. That's another thing to remember, folks. If you lost Dak Prescott, it wasn't looking like he was going to be too strong of a fantasy option. At least I know it was against Tampa, but offensive line woes. So maybe it was a blessing in disguise that it's forcing you to deal with your quarterback situation on your fantasy team right away.
Well, and another reason, because I don't want to get excited about Carson Wentz. And no, I don't hate him. Somebody on Twitter's like, wow, Cecil hates Wentz. I'm like, no, I just know too much.
Yeah.
Bloom, you get a piece of the receivers, right? That's why, like, oh man, I was going to get Michael Thomas and some guy got him. Yeah. Well, you can get Jameis. Oh man, Curtis Samuel, somebody beat me to the waiver wire this morning. Hey, you can get Carson Wentz. You get a piece of that. And the success resides within those two talented receivers. Let's go through the rest of these quarterbacks. Again, it's kind of a boring, it is a lot, and it's a boring group. Including the likes of Joe Flacco and Ryan Tannehill. And yes, even Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah. So we got a 3 to 5% group here, which these are viable guys. All right. If you lost Dak Prescott and you have to rely on one of these quarterbacks, it's okay. If you did a good job elsewhere with your team, and if you took Dak Prescott, you didn't take one of the first quarterbacks off the board, you should be okay with the likes of Matt Ryan. Going up against Jacksonville this week, we saw Carson Wentz, a hero against Jacksonville. Jared Goff was a lot. I'm not saying he was a better quarterback than his stats show, but when he had 3 rushing touchdowns, a team that scored 35 points, a quarterback attached to that offense is pretty good. You're going to see them face Washington this week, and that's not a matchup that scares me. Daniel Jones. Did you see Brian Daboll kind of getting in his grill and lighting a fire under him on the sidelines? And then look what happened in that game. We saw some really ridiculous outcomes this weekend. The Seahawks beating the Broncos, the Steelers beating the Bengals, the Giants beating the Titans, where the teams that lost, there were so many different ways they could have won. And the teams that won, there was like one way they could have won. And they found that one way to win. Or the other team, in the case of the Broncos, see, so I'm going to get you started. The Broncos shot themselves in the foot and in the leg and in the tuchus and everything else. So you have Daniel Jones. He can run. There's some confidence here with this offense. They're facing Carolina. They made Jacoby Brissett. They made the Browns backfield look. The Browns backfield is pretty good. The point is, I'm not seeing the Giants as a dead offense walking here. And then there's Geno Smith. Geno Smith stealing the spotlight. You gotta love it.
I love when he said they wrote me off, but I didn't write him back.
Yeah.
That was the only thing redeeming from the Monday night game, was that Geno Smith had that big smile and had that line. That was great. Yeah. Other than that, the Broncos were awful. Everything's awful. Again, Bloom, don't get me started. Poor Kay Adams this morning. I went on her show, thanks to you, Bloom, because she loves you. I went on there and I released some of that early morning energy, which is like, oh my God, it's terrible. This was a must win and they lost. Yeah. And poor Kay was like, oh,
wasn't ready for this.
They brought the Seattle guy on and he was all reserved. He's very Seattle-like, right? It's like listening to NPR compared to my shock jock radio.
Well, I think, speaking about media, watching Geno Smith, watching the way the New York media kind of cheered on his demise, or maybe even planted the seeds from the beginning. You like seeing the redemption story for him in Seattle, and it wasn't an overwhelming fantasy performance, but he was highly accurate. We know he's pretty mobile, and I'll play him against San Francisco if I have to, instead of giving up a lot in a trade. You get down to the 1%ers. Now, these are your desperation plays, but hey, Joe Flacco will throw the ball a lot going up against Cleveland this week. Baker Mayfield, once the team was down, did have a rushing touchdown on that 75-yarder to Robbie, i.e. Anderson, although didn't do much else in that game. We'll see. I think it makes sense for Carolina to really recenter that offense around Christian McCaffrey, but they're facing the Giants this week. Davis Mills coming out to Denver. See what Denver does as a response to that. And then Ryan Tannehill actually spread the ball around. Ryan Tannehill was pretty efficient against the Giants, had a pretty solid game. Now, that being said, they're not going to throw 2 touchdowns to Dontrell Hilliard all the time. They easily could have been 2 rushing touchdowns for Derrick Henry if Hilliard hadn't finished those drives. They just deliberately marched the ball down the field, and then Tannehill's a bit of a disappointment. So, these are desperation plays. And then in your 2 quarterback superflex leagues, it looks like Mac Jones is going to be okay. It was back spasms. Let's just watch and see. Every quarterback that starts is worth something. Cooper Rush, Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think he's going to get traded to Dallas, but hey, another quarterback injury or 2. The wild card here is I don't know that Jimmy Garoppolo wants to play football. I don't know. I mean, he's delayed his shoulder surgery, so the 49ers would have trouble trading him. Of course, there's the chance that he could take over for Trey Lance, too. So there's a lot of different ways that Jimmy Garoppolo can help you out in a 2 quarterback superflex league eventually. And then Kenny Pickett. My heart hurts watching Mitchell Trubisky play. I'm not trying to dunk on Trubisky, but the Steelers have so much talent wide receiver, and you've got to try something, anything to unlock that talent because Trubisky can't do it. I know that Tomlin's super conservative, and as long as the Steelers are winning or competitive, he's probably not going to make the switch, but he needs to make the switch to Kenny Pickett.
Yes, make the switch to Kenny Pickett as soon as you possibly can. It's week 2 waiver wire here on the Audible, and we're going to talk about some injured running backs. But first, not Dr. Gene Bramall, but me reading Gene Bramall's report, available at footballguys.com. His full injury report is available there, so check it out. Najee Harris, a left Liz Frank sprain, day-to-day, questionable for week 2. Just this morning on the newswire at footballguys.com, Bloom, Najee says, I'm playing. So Ian Rappaport reported that Harris's injury was an aggravation of his August Liz Frank sprain, but said the Steelers weren't concerned about a major setback. Adam Schefter later reported tests were negative and Harris should be good to go in week 2. So dodging a dodgeball, dodging something with the Najee Harris situation and going to the running back waiver wire, Bloom. Well, we'll get to Jaylen Warren eventually, but he's not at the top of your list.
No.
Actually, there's the Philadelphia thing, and it's a thing, and San Francisco thing, it's a thing, and Jet McKinnon and KC, it's a thing. Isaiah Pacheco should be higher. Anyway, 15 to 30% for Kenneth Gainwell, Jerick McKinnon, and Jeff Wilson this week.
See, one of my favorite parts of the waiver wire show is when you insert your editorial comments. It's fun because that's when I learned something. So again, no real splashy pickups this week on the waiver wire. 15 to 30% doesn't necessarily mean spend 30%, but it just tells you, you're not going to bid 1 or 2 units. Kenneth Gainwell, his involvement's going up. Miles Sanders looks good, and Miles Sanders can play and will be a running back 2 for your team. You have some injury upside there if Sanders goes down. You have just week to week flex value with Kenneth Gainwell, and his value is trending up. And obviously, you want players attached to this Eagles offense. Can we say that? You want players attached to this Chiefs offense. Jerick McKinnon is the clear number 2. Don't look at the end of game splits. Isaiah Pacheco, who Cecil's telling us, hey, keep an eye on him, but he was mostly in at the end of the game. It's McKinnon as the number 2, 1A, the receiving down back. And if you don't have faith in Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who was great, by the way, again, don't look at the snap counts or split of the touches. Just know that when the game was underway, it was Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and he came through for your fantasy team. And, well, Arizona didn't do their part to keep him on the field. But McKinnon is a receiving down back and a good offense. And if Edwards-Helaire were to go down, I think you see his role grow at least some. You see a committee there with him and Pacheco. And then there's Jeff Wilson. Wilson didn't look great. It was the conditions partially. But at the same time, you have Deebo Samuel. So Deebo Samuel complicates the San Francisco backfield picture without Elijah Mitchell, because Samuel's going to get his touches. He's going to get touches in the red zone. But you also have the possibility that if Wilson doesn't look that impressive, and Wilson's still going to get passing downs and get those situations where it's really important to trust the running back, and they have that. They don't trust rookies, Jordan Mason and Tyrion Davis-Price yet. We're going to talk about them a little bit later. But they could make Wilson's role a little more specialized if they look like they have more juice on early downs and at least against the Bears at that slip and slide that they were playing on, Wilson didn't have a lot of juice. Deebo Samuel still has juice. So this isn't just as simple as the starting running back went down, get the backup, and it is Jeff Wilson, because Deebo Samuel's there. And that's a good thing because we love watching Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, Jordan Mason, dark horse candidate. We're going to talk about him in just a little bit as well, Bloom. But let's get to the guy who should be a starter probably for the Bears next year. But Khalil Herbert is there, 12 to 25%. He's good, everybody. He's really, really good. Dontrell Hilliard, speaking of good, 12 to 25%, not only getting some carries, but you can get some catches out of the backfield as well. Let's go ahead and throw in some love for our friend Jamal Williams from the Lions. And the Lions, everyone excited about DeAndre Swift. Well, Williams getting those high value carries near pay dirt. So 10 to 20% for him.
In Herbert and Hilliard, you have injury upside backups, and maybe in Herbert's case, not a backup for long, maybe more of a committee member. But you also have players that can help you with standalone value as a desperation play. So Herbert getting the touchdown, I think everyone can see that Herbert's got more juice than Montgomery, and I think the new regime is open to changing the backfield split here. Hilliard is the passing down back. Hilliard has done a great job sticking, but Browns find these backs. The Browns are like the new Saints for finding undrafted backs, and when they end up on other teams, watch out. We'll see what happens with Dearness Johnson. But Hilliard getting those 2 touchdowns in the passing game, he is the passing down back, and I think he's the most valuable back if Derrick Henry goes down. And did you see Derrick Henry actually get hit so hard he got lifted off his feet? Have we ever seen that before? Is that a bad sign? I don't know. I don't want to read too. I don't want to be Mr. Narrative Street, whatever, but I noticed that. I'm like, who was the guy in case Henry goes down? I think it's Hilliard, not Hassan Haskins. Jamal Williams is probably going to go higher on other waiver wire lists because he had 2 touchdowns. Look, DeAndre Swift, he had 2 big plays set up those touchdowns. Now, if those plays were made by DJ Chark or TJ Hawkinson or somebody else, would those have been Swift touchdowns? Would they have been Williams touchdowns? I don't know. I don't know that it's just at the one, it's automatically Jamal Williams. I think Swift had a touchdown on a 4th down in this game. Or at the very least, Swift also had a short yardage touchdown. Hey, bottom line is if you took DeAndre Swift in the 2nd round, you're happy. I know I saw one waiver wire report that said something like their values are closer than their ADP. No, their values are not closer than ADP indicated. The ADP gap was right in this case. It was not a Breece Hall, Michael Carter situation, all right? So Williams will have some value, especially if Swift goes down, but I think still he's more of an injury upside play than a standalone play. But if we do find out this week against Washington that he is truly the dedicated goal to go back, then maybe I'm underestimating him a little bit.
Yeah, we look at the situation across the National Football League, and well, you're going to need some running back help. By the way, Bloom, was it Teron Davenport, our dear friend from ESPN, that reported Hilliard was the guy? Like,
yeah, that's
in July
out there. It was
I think
out
TD
there.
reported that like in July. So.
Yeah, it was out there. Certainly, the closer we got to the beginning of the season, it was clear that he was outperforming Haskins and Julius Chestnut. Not active for week 1. Interesting UDFA to watch long term.
Yeah, and anytime there's certain reporters, Mike Reese, certainly Teron Davenport reports something, you're like, oh, okay, there's my new gospel. Noted. Yeah, when it comes to the Tennessee Titans, let's talk about Eno Benjamin, Rex Burkhead, there's Jordan Mason, and there's Jaylen Warren as well. Save the 1%ers, although Pacheco needs to be higher. Sure. But let's talk about this next group of backs because, again, big reveal and false positives. That's what we learned on week 1. And we got a big reveal in the Houston backfield and in the Arizona backfield. And there's the 49ers backfield we're talking about again.
Yeah. And if you ask Lovie Smith, I guess the tie was a good result because he punted instead of going for it and going for the win because you risk losing. But that's kind of how it goes, right? If you try to win, you risk losing. That's the nature of life, I think. But a good result. So the Rex Burkhead heavy game plan, it may not have been the intention. And certainly if this team was able to get the running game on track with Dameon Pierce, they might have won or had a better chance of winning. So you want to set the priority of the running game, but I don't know how much that's going to change. That being said, Rex Burkhead had 70% of the snaps and 19 touches, still only an okay flex play or running back 2 play. So I'm not rushing out to get Rex Burkhead, but certainly he's the kind of player, especially as we get to the bye week gauntlet, that if you have to play him and he continues to have this kind of involvement in the offense, he can save you by getting you that 10 or 12 points. Eno Benjamin's interesting. It's clear that he is ahead of Darrell Williams. And this is another one where if you pay attention, as we got closer to week 1, it was clear that I know they listed it Benjamin or Darrell Williams, but Benjamin was creating a positive drumbeat from Cliff Kingsbury, among others, well before even training camp. So Benjamin, he looked pretty spry. He looked like a player who had just a lot more edge to his game than the other times we've seen him, which weren't many. Could he eventually have a Chase Edmonds kind of role in this offense? I wouldn't rule it out. But it's clear that if James Conner goes down, and I hate to say this because I love James Conner's story, I love the player he is, the person he is, but he's going to miss time. I mean, it would be more surprising if he doesn't miss time than if he does. I think Benjamin's the guy we want to have there. So there's a little growing standalone value, but know that Benjamin's touches mainly came when the game was out of hand. Not that James Conner was that impressive or efficient with his opportunities in this one. Jordan Mason, you just got to, this is like Elijah Mitchell-ish in that Mason was ahead of the 3rd round pick Tyrion Davis-Price, and Mason has that Chris Carson combative, but with a lot of energy, a lot of burst. So it may well be, and this is one of those situations. Here's another editorial moment, a PSA moment, Cease, that people have to remember, because you see ice, and I get it. Like, with so much data. We're swimming around in data. Whoa, the ocean of data. And we have, targets per route run and snaps and percentages of this and that. But that's how it went in week 1. But guess what? What players did in week 1 can affect what coaches do in week 2, and so on and so forth. So success begets more success, more opportunity, and failure begets less opportunity. So Jordan Mason's the kind of player that sees, even if he only gets 3 or 4 touches this week against Seattle, how he looks on those touches, well, that could grow. And we have to assume that he's ahead of Tyrion Davis-Price because, well, he was active and Davis-Price wasn't. And to be honest, maybe I saw a little more from Mason than Davis-Price. And at least we know from last year that if the team invests a 3rd round pick in a back and he's not doing it, they're not going to just try to prove that they were right with their draft capital. Okay,
well,
so
with their running backs, they'll try to prove they're right with that quarterback.
Yeah,
but that's a different story.
Yeah, and a story that we will continue to update. And then Jaylen Warren, and look, on the Najee Harris tip, okay, do you think this is the last time we've heard about this foot injury this year?
Nope.
I don't think this is the last time we heard about it. I don't think so. So Jaylen Warren is an interesting name, but did you watch the Steelers offense? Is any running back going to have success in this offense? Is any running back going to have fantasy relevance? Obviously Najee Harris is going to be in our lineups, and he did catch that short touchdown, but it's going to be tough sledding for a running back, folks. So I'm happy with Jaylen Warren's success making the team, moving all the way up to number 2 on the depth chart. That being said, I'm not even sure I would recommend starting him if Harris was out.
All right. Did we get everybody?
1%ers.
1%ers. There you go. Kenyon Drake, Zach Moss, and there's Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah.
Be higher. I love Pacheco. Sorry, I'm that guy who was like, when Montreal Washington was doing stupid things last night, like trying to take the ball out of the end zone. Listen, dude, it's not Sanford, okay? Nice kid, inspired kid, hardworking kid. He's quick and fast. But I love how some people in Denver media are just lying. Like, I was totally on Montreal Washington before the draft. Nobody had heard of him. You shouldn't take him in the 5th round. You should have taken Tariq Woolen, or you should have taken Isaiah Pacheco. And Pacheco led the Chiefs in rushing. I know 10 of his 12 carries came in the 4th quarter. When these guys get their opportunity, Bloom, reminds me of a young Clinton Portis. Portis didn't get started until week 6, his rookie year. Why? The team didn't trust him in pass pro. Mike Shanahan didn't. And he ran for 1,500 yards as a rookie. I'm not saying Pacheco will do that, but we've already seen him in his first game lead the team in rushing and score a touchdown. And again, as you say, success begets success. It is a copycat league, or it's a reinvent yourself if it didn't work league. So let's think about that. Like, hey, that worked with Pacheco. What else will work with Pacheco? And if CEH, who's definitely inspired, probably from Pacheco pushing him, if CEH stumbles even the slightest, this team has the confidence in Pacheco, and they have for some time. They just got to see it this week.
Yeah, he was up over Ronald Jones, and he did well with his opportunities, and he's attached to a good offense. So let's not forget one of the things that guided us, a compass through our drafts: break ties in favor of players with good offenses. And I won't be surprised if we look back and Isaiah Pacheco, if he wasn't drafted, if he was dropped after he was drafted, because a lot of the buzz went away as we got deeper into the preseason, we might look back at him as the most valuable pickup of this week, because the Kansas City offense gives a good player league-winning upside. And Pacheco, at least when he got on the field, showed he was a good player. Now, the game situation and things like that can make it a bit of a counterfeit outcome, but I think you're right to cast a spotlight on him. Davis Price, one injury, one step closer to getting on the field. It is San Francisco's running game, which should make things easier for the running back with Trey Lance forcing 11 on 11. And we did see Elijah Mitchell Drano look pretty good before he got hurt. Kenyon Drake, if you have to play a Baltimore running back this week, and it's not J.K. Dobbins. If Dobbins is up, I'll still probably play Drake over Dobbins. Really, I'll plan to play nobody. Miami, by the way, gave Baltimore fits. Baltimore's running game, it has to get back online before I feel like it's going to be a strong running game again. And remember, they lost Jawan James. Hated seeing that. Ronnie Stanley's still not healthy yet. Zach Moss is interesting, only because, again, he plays for Buffalo. Right? I mean, if injuries, we know James Cook is maybe one more fumble away from.
The fumble made me feel so bad for James Cook. I love that kid.
And lots of great running backs have fumbled in their first NFL game. First NFL touch feels a little more inauspicious, but still, and they went back to him. I mean, he did get on the field again. It wasn't one of those like go sit on the bench and don't get up until the end of the game. But Zach Moss, look, he didn't look great. He didn't look like he had his rookie year burst back. He didn't look like an explosive back, but he's competent. He's competent in the passing game. And if Devin Singletary were to get hurt, or if Zach Moss continues to get this role, there could be something there. So we can't forget about him.
Look at what Jay says. Sig, I go down YouTube wormholes sometimes, and I saw a documentary about Fear and Loathing. And I was like,
film?
oh, yeah. So I was like, oh.
They made that in like 11 days. It was a real whirlwind thing, right? Like Terry Gilliam got the crew together, and it kind of was their own version of the Fear and Loathing wild whirlwind.
Wild ride. We're in for a wild ride in the National Football League. It is the Audible. It is our weekly waiver wire show. Dr. Gene Bramall has his injury report. So as I do my best Dr. Gene Bramall impression, you get a look at Gene's darling face. And how about this one? Yeah, there we go. And let's move to the wide receiver position, Bloom, because at the wide receiver position, you have Keenan Allen. That's the one, left hamstring strain, week to week, doubtful for week 2 because it's Thursday night. It's Thursday night against the Kansas City Chiefs. We also have Chris Godwin, who's coming back from his knee injury to have another hamstring strain there as well. He's considered week to week. He's also doubtful for week 2. So wide receivers, a little juicier, a little more information. You want the full injury report from Dr. Gene Bramall? Well, then check it out at footballguys.com. But let's get into your upgrades, downgrades, and waiver wire report, Bloom. I feel sorry for first-time viewers who are like, what the hell is that guy? Comes in every time you talk about injuries. He's Dr. Gene Bramall. He's fantastic. But our cover athlete, because every show we have a cover athlete, is Curtis Samuel. And I just want to talk about him and less about Carson Wentz, but just about him, what he can do. He's healthy, and this is the way he can be utilized. And honestly, Bloom, he could do a little bit more. He's the number 1 wide receiver for you this week.
Yeah, you just see he's a player, and he's one of those players that because he hasn't been healthy for so long, we just thought, well, he's never going to be healthy again, or at least he has to prove it. He proved it. And remember, he's with the offensive coordinator, Scott Turner, who knew his game from Carolina. And I think that this is a good thing. I mean, he can get involved as a runner. He was involved in the short passing game. Obviously, he has chemistry with Carson Wentz. So he's your marquee pickup. He's your guy that, especially against Detroit, you pick him up, you put him right in the lineup, and we'll see. We'll see how Carson Wentz plays, and we'll see how many wide receivers he can support, because Washington has more than one wide receiver in the waiver wire report this week.
Yes, they do. And we get to Robbie. I always have to double check the way he spells his name now, which is fine. But Robbie Anderson, 15 to 30%. I'm not inspired by that. Julio Jones, okay. Jarvis Landry, more. You're getting warmer, Bloom.
Yeah.
And you're 15 to 30%ers when we talk about Landry anyway.
Yeah, Anderson, he got the 75-yard touchdown. He was on the field all the time. I mean, this is an Anderson and Moore offense. And at least, again, success begets success. So that was the big play for the Panthers to get up off the deck. Maybe it's DJ Moore next week. I don't know. But at the very least, you have the chance of that in any given week with Robbie Anderson. With Julio Jones, you saw him hitting top speeds again. He wasn't involved is a full-time receiver, but that's actually better, right? I mean, you want Julio Jones 50-60% of the snaps because you want him to be around in November and December. And when he's on the field, he's a high leverage target. So especially with the hamstring injury with Chris Godwin, I think Julio now against Tampa, Marshawn Lattimore, I mean, we'll see if Lattimore is on. And that's the interesting thing for Tampa is if Marshawn Lattimore is on Mike Evans, which is always must-see TV, then does that create some sort of mismatch? I think it's Paulson Adebo. We'll see about Julio Jones, but his value is obviously trending up if he's out there. And then Jarvis Landry. And I guess in hindsight, we should have just known, right? Like a player like Jarvis Landry, who's combative, who wins those contested catches, who maybe doesn't create a ton of separation with all kinds of lateral agility and juice at this point in his game, but he is a player. And so is Jameis Winston. And of course, he would make the 40-yard catch to set up the game-winning field goal. Of course, he would be a player that would have fantasy relevance. So in hindsight, maybe even, and then again, that's with a healthy Michael Thomas. Chris Olave is the guy maybe who is a little underperforming expectations. So there's room there with Jameis Winston, even only playing good football for like a quarter to support 2.5 fantasy receivers, and Landry was one of them.
John Dotson and Josh Palmer up next at 7 to 15%. With Dotson Bloom, we didn't even get to see the greatest part of his ability, which is the speed.
Yeah.
So interesting. And then here we go with the Keenan Allen fallout there with Palmer.
Yeah, and Palmer was in on 75% of the snaps, but it was DeAndre Carter, who we'll get to at the end of the wide receiver segment, who got the slot snaps or more of the slot work and actually had the bigger game than Palmer. But you think, now it's Thursday, so Thursday night game, a shorter preparation calendar for the Chargers, but you would think with Allen almost certainly out that Palmer would be a bigger part of the game plan. And by the way, where was Mike Williams? What's questions? So, but Palmer against the Chiefs, this is going to be a good game, by the way. I think that this is what you're waiting for with Palmer, an injury to one of the top two receivers. We'll see what happens, but he had a lot of buzz this summer. They were saying he was a player that took a big step forward. Jahan Dotson, and hey, I'll admit that because of how I feel about Carson Wentz, I didn't really want to boost any Washington players. But I know Evan Silva, for one, I was on his show. He was talking about how much he liked Jahan Dotson. And hey, I'll take the L on this one because you saw it was contested catches, 2 contested catch touchdowns, including the one to go ahead in the game. And again, success will beget success. Now, can Carson Wentz support the value of Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin? Because if anything, Cease, John Keim, who's covered this team for a long time, seemed to indicate like, hey, they don't need to rely on Terry McLaurin. Usually when they don't go to McLaurin, they lose. But that didn't happen this time. It was, I think, the first time they've won going 5 or less targets to him. 5 or fewer. Grammar. Anyway, my point is that this is something we have to watch with Dotson. As like you said, we can only go up from here as the rookie as the first round pick. So again, I did not expect us to be talking about 2 Washington Commanders on the waiver wire for wide receivers this week, but that's what a good Carson Wentz game can do.
But here we go. A good game from them, which makes Carson Wentz look better. Bloom. No, I don't hate him. I just know too much. Let's talk about the guys behind him. 3 to 5%ers, including DJ Chark, Romeo Dobbs, Christian Watson. A lot of people curious about the Green Bay situation. And well, I'm sure Aaron Rodgers is probably going to be difficult to be around this week. I'm sure, scratch that, Bloom. I'm sure Aaron Rodgers is probably difficult to be around every week.
Yeah. We're going to watch this with the Packers receivers, and Dobbs, I think, is the better all-around player, a little more polished. But remember, if Christian Watson had just caught that deep ball, the game might have changed. And certainly we'd be talking about Watson maybe up there at the 20 to 40% level. I mean, all he has to do is do that Marquez Valdez-Scantling role, and that makes him fantasy relevant. So I think both of them are speculative ads. I know Alan Lazard should be back soon, maybe even this week, but it's attached to Aaron Rodgers. And look, as an aside, as I see some folks in the chat saying it's just 1 week. I think it was my man Charlender. It's just 1 week, and something that we can use to moderate mediate this stuff. Okay. Again, a little speech here. Don't overreact, but don't fail to react either. We're going to go back and look through week one, and we're going to recontextualize as we get more results. We're going to start to get better answers on the whys of how the week one results went and whether they're sticky or not. But some of them are going to be sticky. And taking your shot, just like we do in drafts, right? This is what we do in fantasy football. We make decisions based on incomplete information. That's what we do. So embrace it, lean into it. All right. So getting on these Packers, remember last year,
by the time it becomes obvious, it's over.
And
right?
too late. Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're waiting for definitive evidence,
it's
you
like
miss
being a
the
quarterback.
train.
You can't see it, throw it. You have to anticipate when your guy's going to be open. You have to anticipate where these guys are going based on the data, not the God blessed numbers, everyone, but based on the data and information we get from these great reporters. You mentioned John Keim. I think he's an Audible alum. Tron Davenport, Mike Reese. Like there's certain people you listen to, you go, I heard this all summer. Oh, this means this.
Right.
If you're waiting for more information, waiting for more confirmation, well, you're going to be too late.
You're going to be still waiting. So remember, last year the Packers came down here to New Orleans and lost 38-3, I think, something like that. And then they were fine. They won 35-17 against Detroit. They're going to be back at home against Chicago. Green Bay's going to be fine. Rodgers is going to be fine. Passing game's going to be fine. And then DJ Chark. And the touchdown came, and it wasn't quite garbage time. When the game ends up 38-35 and the Eagles have to convert a fourth down or first short yardage first down to clinch the game, you got to love Dan Campbell and this team's fight. But let's say the Eagles were already looking ahead to the plane ride home at the time that DJ Chark scored, but that doesn't matter. You do have this offense. It's going to be a productive offense, and DJ Chark can play, so he should be on a roster at least until Jameson Williams comes back. And I wonder about what week we're going to start talking about Jameson Williams.
Not soon enough, Bloom. Let's say that. We get back to the waiver wire report and more wide receivers. Your deeper leagues, but DeAndre Carter, Greg Dortch, Devin Duvernay, Richie James, Zay Jones, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Kyle Phillips. And did I see in our chat room that our dear friend Matt Harmon, who is so fantastic and awesome, so many good Matt Harmon stories, but he's got the Matt Harmon stamp of approval. Bloom, that's like the Matt Waldman stamp of approval. Am I right, fellas? Yeah.
It is. Lots of good Matts. Matt Schauf coming on the IDP Blitz this week on Wednesday. Look for that, folks. From Draft Sharks. 1% and then total professional, truly. More professional than us for sure. The 1%ers and then kind of 1%ers in your very deep leagues. 1%ers, you're just throwing a unit and see what happens. Devin Duvernay. And again, okay, on one hand, you have Devin Duvernay's snap count. You have Devin Duvernay's role. But on the other hand, when Jackson targeted Duvernay, good things happened. So it can change. You don't necessarily plug Duvernay in against Miami, but let's see if there's some momentum here. Let's see if there's some momentum for Zay Jones, who, yes, it was Christian Kirk out of the slot, and that's going to be the easier targets for Trevor Lawrence, but Zay Jones also had 6 catches. Zay Jones also has some relevance in PPR leagues. Donovan Peoples-Jones, I don't know if he had 5 or 6 catches, but he was Jacoby Brissett's number 1, not Amari Cooper. Now, again, things can change. But remember this, too, with your Cleveland pickups, depending on the length of your bench and how patient you are at holding, you can eventually get the Deshaun Watson bump. I almost feel like Deshaun Watson's like Voldemort. Like, you know who? Like, we're going to say his name. Anyway, the point is, you have some late end of the year, last third of the year bump there. Kyle Phillips, and it just makes sense, right? It just makes sense that in Tennessee's offense, especially while Robert Woods is rounding back into form, especially while Treylon Burks has some value, but is not yet a truly refined finished NFL wide receiver, that Kyle Phillips, who comes into the league as a refined slot receiver, can be that player that Tennessee needs. And he had a big play that set up what should have been. See, tell me if you heard this one before. Randy Bullock missed a game-winning kick. So how did the Titans lose that game? Anyway, it wasn't because of Kyle Phillips, and Kyle Phillips isn't exactly going to win your league for you, but he could be an important player with a high PPR floor. Your 1% deep league guys, again, maybe DeAndre Carter, even with fewer snaps, less participation than Josh Palmer, is more valuable while Keenan Allen is out. Although what you saw, how many different receivers did Justin Herbert complete multiple passes to? Like 8 or 9? I mean, they're spreading it around, and then there's really spreading it around. You've got Greg Dortch, who a lot of people liked, bounced around, didn't really stick. And with Rondale Moore hurt, and I have a feeling Rondale Moore's hamstring injury is worse than they're letting on. I know they haven't put him on injured reserve. I don't think we're going to see him this week, Rondale Moore, that is. AJ Green ain't doing much. And we'll see with Arizona, hopefully in a more competitive game. I mean, you got two bad defenses here, I think, with the Cardinals and the Raiders. Dortch is a 1 week plug-in. If Moore's not back, sure. Richie James, Dortch and James, and I was not a Dortch guy. I know my man Steel Ryan 5 was, but I've always been a Richie James guy. I thought Richie James was going to be better than Dante Pettis. And, well, the answer was none of the above, although Dante Pettis, he had a long touchdown too, right?
He did.
So, but Richie James can play. And whether it's because they don't trust Kadarius Toney, whether it's because Wandale Moore, I'm putting Wandale and Rondale together.
Rondale, New York, right?
Right. It all
Elijah Moore somewhere.
Week 2, it's too much, too many names, too much information, and so we're getting too old for this. My point is that you do have Richie James having some opportunity and looking pretty good, and we'll see if that can stick in your deep leagues. But again, and this isn't to put a damper on this because I love getting together with Cecil. And by the way, what a turnout for the waiver wire show today. We're destroying the live chat and the number of people here with us live.
Shout out to you.
Thank you folks for coming out. I mean, it just makes your time is so precious and you want to spend it with us live as we do this. This is awesome. But we're talking about Richie James and Greg Dortch. It's not necessarily the most exciting week 1 waiver wire.
I'd rather talk about the Metallica and Justice for All and how everything went downhill for them after they had a video for one. Anyway,
well,
I kid. Longtime Metallica fans will get that. It is the Audible. It is our week 2 waiver wire show. You want the full Dr. Gene report? You go to footballguys.com. I will read an excerpt. We have some breaking news. That is fantastic. By the way, Brian does these.
Yeah.
Brian, thank you. As always, my friend. It makes me happy to see those in my inbox when I get a new Gene picture. So you got a suggestion?
Did you say a nude Gene picture?
Ain't no new, brand new.
It's only weird if you make it weird.
Gene picture. But let's read his injury report when we talk about tight ends and follow-up appointments with George Kittle. A groin strain week to week, questionable for week 2. The flooded field conditions in Chicago may have played a role in Kittle's status, but there was never any optimism for Kittle to play during the week. If the injury was lower grade, Kittle may return to practice and prepare to play in week 2. And my God, could they use him? So let's get to the tight ends and your upgrades, downgrades, waiver wire report. It's available at footballguys.com and throw in everybody. Wait, where's OJ Howard?
Right,
Throw in everybody here. And by the way, OJ Howard plays against the Broncos this week.
Ooh.
So Bloom, not to be that guy. And I don't
know.
So
you're telling me the Broncos can't defend the tight end? I know. Like I've heard this somewhere before.
Shocker. So you think you're like, OJ Howard will never do that again. I think I said that on the recap show, right? Oh, OJ Howard will never do that. He'll do it one more week. So I hate to be the guy, and this is very specific to one person that we know, specifically Bloom, but I hate to be that grease ball that tries to get that get rich quick scheme. Like, you need to buy some payphones. But not to sound too greaseball-y, but OJ Howard's going to do it again. Then sell him because he'll never do it after that. So 2 touchdowns last week. What's he do for an encore? Oh, it's Denver.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
They still can't stop. Their defense looked atrocious last night. All your tight ends are grouped together, Bloom. So let's just talk about them all.
And we started with Alberto, and at first it looked like Andrew Beck, speaking of all the tight ends, it was going to be anybody, Eric Salbert, it was going to be anybody but Alberto. And then Alberto came on, and you saw him showing some good determination after the catch, was tackled at the half-yard line. So Alberto is the marquee. The point is, guess what? It's tight end. And you're going to hope you took Travis Kelce. And otherwise, you're happy if you get 10 or 15 points from your tight end. If you get a touchdown from your tight end, you get 5 catches from your tight end. Welcome back to the tight end position in fantasy football. Alberto, this is 5 to 10%. I mean, you're not going to break the bank for any of these guys. Gerald Everett, especially while Donald Parham is out, although Trey McKitty, their project tight end from last year in the 3rd round, he caught 3 balls, so you never know what's going to happen there. But Everett had a nice touchdown. Hayden Hurst, and what you need to know about Hurst is he's running a lot of routes, and we'll see about T. Higgins and his concussion this week. But Hurst, I mean, hey, one of Joe Burrow's targets Hurst is more receiver than blocker, and that's how they're using him. Logan Thomas had one of those ACL plus injuries. And to see him play, just get active for week 1 was something, but he played and he had 3 for 45 in his first game back. His involvement should go up. We're talking about Carson Wentz supporting 3 fantasy wide receivers and a fantasy tight end, and Antonio Gibson caught like 7 balls in this game, or maybe it's just Jacksonville's defense. Again, this is why we go back and we recontextualize what we saw in week 1 based on what we see in week 2, et cetera, et cetera. But Logan Thomas, the air is pointing up. Robert Tonyan coming back off of an ACL, 3 for 36 in a miserable day for the Packers. So certainly the air is pointing up for him. Remember, he had 3 touchdowns in one of the games Devontae Adams missed. By the way, Devontae Adams with Derek Carr is going to be fine. It's going to be just fine. Yeah, he's good. He's still very, very good at Derek Carr. Knows that. And then Tyler Higbee. Good news is 5 for 39. The bad news is it was 11 targets. He didn't look good on his targets, but if the Rams offensive line, and they lost Brian Allen, so they already weren't great. Now, maybe again, we might look back and say, well, it's the Buffalo Bills defense. It's the Buffalo Bills rush. And the Rams will look a lot better this week against Atlanta. We'll see. Atlanta also had 4 sacks with Jameis Winston in the first 35 minutes of that game. So we'll see. But Tyler Higbee, you could do worse at tight end than Tyler Higbee, which is, again, it's week 2, and we're already back to, well, I guess if you have to, here's someone you can play at tight end.
It's the Audible, Bloom.
Yeah.
Are you ready for this one? Now, we don't have the video anymore. I mean, I still have it, but I haven't uploaded it here to a beautiful StreamYard. When I climbed up the mountain to yell it from the top of the mountain about what I'm going to say in a little bit. And I was like, maybe I should just upload that again. And then I thought, nah, I'm 60 pounds heavier. And I was huffing and puffing on the way. Now, I probably still would do it.
Let's do it again.
I'm going to go do it.
You need to do it in the middle of like Larimer Square or something.
Yeah, something like that, right? Go down to Empower Field at Mile High or something like that. Or I should just get out and hike the mountains more. We have beautiful Waterton Canyon.
See, what you need, get Patrick Smythe, get the Broncos staff to help you out with this one, where it's like in the middle of a press conference, and you're like, one more thing, one was going to say, and as they're like no, and you're like, as they're pulling you out of the room, the security's removing you. It's just as loud.
Reaching around the corner, right? Like Princess Leia trying to warn Luke that it's a trap. It's a trap, right? And Luke's so dumb, he goes ahead and goes for it. It's like, come on, Luke. Huh? What do you mean it's a trap? I think it's sound trap. I don't know what she said. Anyway, you know what we're going to say. I got to drink water, though.
Yeah. Wet the whistle.
Yes, because it has been a while. And as I've told the story before, this will come up. And then I'll be happy and I'll be sad because I can't say it yet. But I get to say it today. And this one's for you, Nathaniel Hackett. This one's for you, buddy. Mr. Happy Fun Coach. I'm super happy. I got Russell Wilson. You got bump kiss when you treat a game like that. You got nothing when you go out there and moronically do not let your quarterback cook. Even Pete Carroll had to be shaking his head and chomping on his gum about how stupid of a decision that was to not let Russ cook. So, Nathaniel Hackett, Mr. Happy Fun Guy. You're so happy. It's so fun. It's not fun now. 6 years have been miserable here. You were supposed to change that. You did not do that last night. So when I yell this and I say this for you, Bloom, for the listeners, it'll be for players on their fantasy roster. For me, it's the blankety blank head coach. Vic Fangio is trending today because of Nathaniel Hackett's decisions. So that's not good. So I say this, and I want everyone to say it with me, including the people, what's it? Yeah, your boy Toby, who was listening at work and his boss doesn't know him. Yeah, Toby, even you, even if you only have to do it in your mind, because I understand some of you are, in church or at work or in a library somewhere where you can't do this, but everyone else, I demand that you do this. I need you to do this. And for new people, just sit back and enjoy. And then next week, join in as you say it with me. Cue the truck band! Oh, there we shut him down.
Wow. Yeah, boy, oh boy. Week 2 is always a bloody shut him down week. I think you can drop Dak Prescott, honestly. I know the 4 to 6 week timeline is there, but he didn't look like he was going to really elevate fantasy teams anyway, short bench leagues especially. Looking at running back, Elijah Mitchell, if you have an IR spot, that's great. And there's a larger discussion here of whether IR spots belong in redraft leagues now with all the IR return. But 8 weeks, and I love Elijah Mitchell. It depends on how good your waiver wire is. It depends on what the opportunities are. Now, granted, is there anybody so compelling this week that I would drop Elijah Mitchell for them? Curtis Samuel, maybe upside running back. So I'm just not attached to him. Amir Abdullah, that didn't work out. Mike Davis, that didn't work out. Kyron Williams, injured again. Maybe it'll work out later. If depending on your bench, James Cook, you have 5 bench spots. I mean, again, depending on how fat your waiver wire is, I suppose Mitchell and Cook, I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here, are compelling enough that in the moment of truth, I might not drop them. But still, you're probably better off having not as much attachment to these players that you're not going to see for a long time. Wandale Robinson got hurt, Randall Cobb and Sammy Watkins. Old banana in the tailpipe fell for it again. Kenny Golladay. I mean, this is just confirmation, right? I mean, if you were waiting to see if there was a pulse, no, there's not. Maybe he'll turn around and do something. Austin Hooper, Jeff Swaim. That's the answer. Mike Gesicki. They franchise tagged him to block, Cecil. To block. Mike Gesicki. Cole Kmet. Wasn't even missionary season. It was something else.
Stop. You can't say it. Can't say it.
Mo Alley Cox. I just don't know what to say. It was more Kylan Granson splitting that. I just think that there's potential there. Not if it's split. Isaiah Likely, and we may revisit Isaiah Likely. He got 4 targets, had 1 clank off his hands. He was involved. There might be something there down the line for him, but there are also some players, depending on how you feel down the line, you have to maybe staying attached is the right answer.
All right, maybe staying attached and keeping it together is the right answer, because on the opposite side of shut them down, well, there's one thing you can do in week 2. Yes, week 2. You can still hold on, Bloom. And who are those week 2 hold-ons?
And some of these might seem elementary, but let's just be very thorough here. He's a good doctor and thorough. Jay Lance, let's wait. Justin Fields too. Let's wait until they're not playing in poor conditions. Matthew Stafford, let's wait until he's not playing the Buffalo defense. Also, I think that Sean McVay laid into that team. I'm interested to see how they respond. Cam Akers, look, with Kyron Williams hurt and everything that I'm hearing and that we're seeing from Sean McVay is this is more of a mental thing than a physical thing. It's not like the Achilles robbed him of something he won't get back. So he has to get his confidence back. He has to get his edge back. Damian Pierce, obviously, you're going to hold him. Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson, I'm probably holding on to just because they're going to be matchup specific. They'll be at least be flex plays or maybe even matchup running back twos, even in 3-headed backfield when New England's favored. Well, we'll see. I mean, I think New England might be favored in this game at Pittsburgh, if I'm right. But anyway, when I'm looking at Harris and Stevenson versus some of the other injury upside running backs, I mean, they themselves have injury upside with each other. Probably holding on to Robert Woods, but I'm not totally attached. Like if you said, I'm dropping Robert Woods for Curtis Samuel. Yeah, you get the momentum there. Holding on to Pickens, holding on to Chase Claypool, just because I think not that Kenny Pickett is going to make this offense take off, but at the very least, he could make them viable plays downfield. They're both super talented players. Devontae Smith, and we're going to see what Nick Sirianni and company does, because A.J. Brown, it's like Nick Sirianni is our friend for fantasy in some ways, because isn't this just what you want, right? If you go and you spend this much for a player, then you feature them. And he did, and it worked beautifully. Now, some of that's going to be Detroit and the Detroit matchup. That's why we think these Washington players can maintain momentum this week. But I think there's going to have to be a point where teams are going to sell out and say, okay, now we're going to, and Jalen Hurts isn't exactly the most refined, nuanced passer when it comes to going through progressions. So what happens if we take away A.J. Brown? Devontae Smith is a very, very good player. Don't bail on him yet. And Kadarius Toney, we'll see. We saw Brandon Ayuk last year eventually get out of the doghouse, have fantasy relevance. Kadarius Toney looked great, fantastic on his 2 touches. So just as the Giants offense outside of Saquon Barkley, like, well, who are you? Well, Brian Daboll, hey, he won. Okay, maybe he shouldn't have won, but he won. So we're going to say that maybe this actually keeps my man Eric Stoner. Love you, Eric. We were texting back and forth. He's like, oh, now Dable. Well, I don't know. The is mine, not his. Like Dable's going to feel vindicated. We won, even though I taught Kadarius Toney a lesson. We'll see how that goes. But Kadarius Toney is too talented to drop while he's healthy. David Njoku, Irv Smith. Smith was coming back off of that thumb. Maybe ease back in. Njoku. Maybe I'll give him one more week because it is the Jets this week and it is tight end. So it's not like the pickups are that compelling. What's compelling is getting together with our people. Again, the turnout, be still my beating heart. Getting to spend time with Cecil. We get to go through our schedule every week, Cecil. It's one of the things that powers me. Certainly all of the good football guys people. So great to serve. We're back.
We're back. Yeah, and my voice is shot, so I got to drink some throat coat tea. Unpaid endorsement, Bloom. I think you said it best, and I won't get into the behind the scenes of it, but you said when we get in our yellow boxes, all is right.
That's where we want to be.
All is right here in our yellow boxes with you. Appreciate you all so very much. Appreciate you checking out footballguys.com. Sign up for that free daily newsletter every day. The top news stories from the NFL sent to your inbox directly to you with news and information provided by me, Sigmund Bloom, and Joe Bryant. A hell of a trio. Sorry, Joe. Anyway, so check out footballguys.com for all your fantasy needs. The newsletter is free. Check us out, and it's our introduction to you. We appreciate you, and thank you for signing up for that free daily newsletter. If you feel so compelled, subscribe to footballguys.com. We're here for you with tens of thousands of pages of content for your fantasy season. You're the hero. We're the guide. It's footballguys.com. So check us out there. Make sure to do all those YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. And we appreciate you all for watching and listening. He is Sigmund Bloom. Follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. I am at Cecil Lammey. The show is at the Audible. Everyone, thanks for watching. Stay tuned. And as always, stay frosty.